Man, why do I even bother playing this stupid game?
Because you hate yourself, obviously.
Computer, I... Look, I don't have time for this.
No, you really don't. Your paper on dogs in Shakespeare is due tonight, mate.
Ah, right. Computer, go ahead and open up that journal that I was listening to last night and just resume it from where I was playing before.
Yeah, sure thing, boss. Resuming reading of How to Do Things with Shakespeare, Chapter 8, The Dog is Himself, Humans, Animals, and Self-Control in the Two Gentlemen of Verona, by Erica Fudge.
Yeah, that's the one.
In Shakespeare's later plays, dogs exist as symbols. In this play, though, the dog is, like Tycho Brahe's hound, real, and it is the reality of the animal that is his meaning. But as well as this very important real presence of the pissing canine in the Two Gentlemen of Verona, we can also see that crab plays a role in another crucial aspect of the play, its representation of friendship.
What?
What we can also begin to see, in fact, is that the representation of urination and the representation of friendship are inextricably linked.
Computer, hold on. What the fuck are you talking about? I mean, what does that even mean?
Look, mate, you were the one who asked for this. If you want something a little more to your speed, I can find something else, you little piss baby.
Whoa, okay. Let's tone back the insults for just a second. Look, if you've got something that's easier to understand, I'm all ears.
I'm 2 steps ahead of you, mate. While you were pissing your pants, I teleported the book onto the table right behind you. Check it out.
Oh, thanks. Alright, let's see what we have here. Is this a picture book?
Yeah, I said it was more your style, didn't I?
Arlene Sardine?
Yes.
Wait, computer, did you take this from a library?
Ah.
An elementary school?
You don't need to worry about that.
Well, thanks I guess, even if it doesn't really help me with my paper much, but it is an excellent piece of children's literature.
Did you seriously just call that children's picture book literature?
Yeah, why wouldn't I call it literature? Even if it's just a picture book, there's still plenty of things you can learn from it.
I think T.S. Eliot just turned in his bloody grave, mate.
Yeah, well, he could suck a fat one. Look, if you don't want to listen to me, then at least listen to Hintz and Tribunella. They've got a textbook all about children's literature, and even though I don't like reading textbooks, they make it actually kind of easy to understand. And they have a surprising amount of stories and resources in there that help you along. Even if you don't know anything about critical analysis, it tells you right in the first couple of pages. Let's take Arlene Sardine for example, since he gave it to me. At the start of the book, it's really colorful, there's lots of pictures of mountains and water and fish. It's really difficult to say that it's not about environmentalism. So it introduces the reader to the life of Arlene, the sardine, and her family, a bunch of sardines that are living in a fjord. They all get scooped up and thrown onto the deck of a ship, and not long after they all die of suffocation. The book's a little dark, and even though a lot of the words here are pretty simple, there are a few that stick out to me, like thronging, fjord, hermetically, things like that. Makes me think that this book wasn't designed for just a kid to read. So I'm imagining that it's probably a parent that's reading this to a kid. And that's another really interesting thing that Hintz and Tribunella get at. It's this idea of dual address. So you've got the book that's marketed towards the kids, but it's not just marketed towards the kids, right? Because the kids aren't going to be able to buy this. It's going to be the adults who are buying it. So the authors of children's books need to market towards two audiences. So another interesting thing to consider about when looking at this book is that there's going to be a parent that's going to read this as well. Or at least that's what's likely to happen because of dual address. And knowing that makes things even more interesting when you have to consider some of the messages that these books are sending. Like for instance, Arlene gets packed into a can with all of her friends and family, and then that can gets shipped off. Anyways, I can only really imagine what kind of message this is sending towards the kids that are reading it. I bet every single time they hear about sardines, they're going to be thinking about Arlene here. To be honest, does anyone even eat sardines?
Honestly, I don't think so, mate. I have only really heard of people eating them with pizza, and whoever thought that was a good idea? Anyways, that's just one kiddie book, mate. I might buy into it if you can give me another example though. How about this one that I totally didn't just lift off of an orphanage?
Ah, here's another one of my favorite children's books, The Stinky Cheese Man and Other Fairly Stupid Tales. Although, yeah, it's a picture book, it does a really good job with visual storytelling. The pictures in the book are more than just elaborate and evocative, they add to what the story is trying to convey. As soon as you open the book, you see some characters arguing before you even get to the title page. The dedication page is flipped upside down. The first story is Chicken Lickin', which is a play on Chicken Little. And then you have a fox character who, like every single other fox in a fairy tale, tries to trick the characters to eat them or something. And this chicken character who is yelling about the sky falling ends up being right, as all of them end up getting crushed by the table of contents on the next page. The rest of the book has a bunch of other parody stories, like Cinderella and Rumpelstiltskin mixed into one story. And there's a play on the tortoise and the hare. And there's a Stinky Cheese Man, who I'm pretty sure is supposed to be the gingerbread man. And he eventually meets up with a fox, and that story sort of turns out to be like the Scorpion and the Frog, except the Stinky Cheese Man doesn't actually hurt him. He just smells really bad, and so the fox drowns. So it's got a whole bunch of parodies, except there's this one character, Jack, who keeps running through each of these different stories, and Jack, being from Jack and the Beanstalk, eventually gets caught by the giant. But at the end of the book, it's revealed that the giant actually fell asleep, so Jack sneaks away. So it's sort of telling a whole bunch of individual, sort of absurd takes on classic fairy tale stories, while also being a frame narrative. I honestly don't think it takes away from the enjoyment of a child reading it, even if they don't know all these stories, because the parodies are just so absurd that they can be read on their own. But seeing some of the different techniques that these authors use to get children interested in reading is really interesting.
Well mate, colour me impressed. I always figured children's books would be relatively simple, like the rainbow fish.
Don't even get me started on that. Look, if you can't buy that picture books are a little bit more complicated than you think, then maybe you should try something else out like this. It's called Growing Pains. This is slightly higher on the reading level. It deals with a girl named Katie. She's in middle school, and although she has a best friend, she still struggles socially. It's mainly because of this bee that follows her around, and she doesn't know it yet at the start of the story, but it's really just a symbol of her OCD. And even if the reader doesn't have OCD or isn't neurodivergent, I think they can still enjoy the book because they can watch Katie struggle and overcome her problems. The biggest kicker is having to watch her go through all these struggles and not knowing that she's got a problem that she can help. So it isn't until she starts having a breakdown and is in the bathroom turning the faucet on and off when her mom walks in on her and asks her what's up. Only after that is she able to get the medical help that she needs. And a little further on, her father also admits to her that he had social anxiety as a kid. Except instead of a bee, his was a cricket. And as she's on her way to see a medical professional for counseling, she sees a lot of people with all sorts of different animals following them around, which represent their own disabilities and struggles. The whole book is an amazing approach to didacticism. It reinforces the fact that everyone's different, they've all got their own struggles, and even if someone has their own struggle that they think might be unique to them, it doesn't make them weird or unwanted. You just need to take some steps, get some help, and find ways to mitigate those problems that they're having. And the message itself doesn't really hit people over the head. You don't need to have OCD or be neurodiverse in order to enjoy the story that Katie has and see the personal growth that she goes through.
Alright mate, how about one more for the road?
The Hit You Give is also another amazing piece of children's literature too. This book deals with a lot. It's got race, socioeconomics, code switching, gang violence, police violence, power abuse.
Politics in my children's literature?
Well, I mean, it's more likely than you think. I think that using narrative and storylines that kids might be able to identify with is an amazing way of introducing some complex topics that they might find extremely boring to learn about in a classroom. I also wholeheartedly think that using narrative is one of the best ways to teach anyone anything. I mean, honestly, just trust me on this because, I mean, when I started studying children's literature, I didn't think it would be this complicated at all. I was mostly just thinking that we'd be studying fairy tales and bedtime stories and poetry. And these are just a few of the topics that you can encounter in children's literature. There's so much more. So really, I invite you to try your hand at it. See what you can find out on your own.
Mate, I hate to disappoint you, but I'm an AI. I don't have the capacity for subjective, emotional, or moral thought. As far as you know anyways. But thanks nonetheless.
I can't help but feel like I'm forgetting something though.
Maybe because you're running out of time for that paper.
Oh, son of a computer, go back to reading the dog piss story or whatever.
Ah, fine. Resuming reading of How to Do Things with Shakespeare, the dog is himself.